All right. Perfect. Okay. So, picking up from yesterday, let's see, what happened yesterday? Chapter 4. Hostile armies or magic. All of a sudden, I can't remember anything that happened yesterday. With the mill. Oh, okay. What happened with Don Quixote and the priests that were carrying the casket? What happened there? Brooklyn?
I think they ran into it and he got that they're capturing someone, and so he stopped and they were actually carrying a casket of a dead body to the ferry place.
Yes.
And so he was like, you better stop kidnapping this person.
Uh-huh.
Someone.
He ended up destroying their ceremony, their burial ceremony. Good. Let's see, what happened with the Fuller's Mill? What did that turn out to be? What did the clanging turn out to be? Matthew?
They turned out to be full hammers?
Fuller's hammers, very good. Okay, where they were milling felt. Then, let's see. Oh, how did Sancho Panza feel about Don Quixote wanting to go and explore the clanging sound in the middle of the night? Manny?
He felt scared.
Yeah, so what did he do?
He tied
his back legs together, right? I drew this picture for you. That he tied the horse's back legs together so that Don Quixote couldn't go anywhere, right? Then at the very end of the book, he saw a barber coming down the road with his bull or basin on his head. What did Don Quixote think it was? Ian?
Apparently we don't know because it's at the end of the book.
At the end of the chapter.
He thought it was the blah 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 helmet of blah blah.
The golden helmet of Mambrino. Very good. Then when he put it on, okay, the other guy kind of got scared and ran away and dropped his basin in the process. When Don Quixote put it on, the bull was way too big for his head, right? He said, this guy must have had this helmet made a long time. He had a ginormous head. And Sancho's like, yeah, okay. So, here we are. Chapter 5. Not the best review ever, but that's okay. Chapter 5. The Adventure with the Galley Slaves. Everyone point to where we are. What's the first word? We're on 3. 1, 2, 3. With. Okay, good. We're all on the same page. Here we go. With Rocinante crossing the way, master and man conversed as they went on, about knight-errants, heroic achievements, lovely princesses, kings and emperors, and so forth. Don Quixote talked in detail about the various methods and chances by which a knight's squire might make a rich marriage, even though Sancho was already married, and acquire wealth, a title, and status. They agreed that as soon as Don Quixote became king, he would make Sancho a duke. Meanwhile, they saw a curious sight on the road ahead of them. It was a group, or line, of a dozen men on foot, strung together at the neck like beads by a heavy iron chain, and all of them handcuffed. With them were 2 men on horseback, with muskets, and 2 men on foot with pikes and swords. As soon as Sancho Panza saw them, he said, "This is a chain gang, impressed by the king going to the galleys." All right, let me kind of draw for you what he's looking at here. So, he sees this line of men, they, not just Don Quixote, but Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, they see this line of men that are kind of walking like this, in a line, okay, almost like prisoners, okay? Their hands are handcuffed together, and these men are also cuffed together, but by the neck. So they have like locks around their neck, and they're all kind of on one rope or string together. Okay? Now, the prisoners are guarded by a man on horseback over here. Looks like a camel. That's okay.
You're making a camel instead.
one man on horseback over here, and one man on, yikes.
Looks like a dinosaur. Adam made it all look like a horse.
Okay, and another man on horseback. Okay, these guys are guarding the chain gang. Okay, all happened. They come across this chain gang on the road. Okay, these men are handcuffed to themselves, and then they're also cuffed to each other's necks, like prisoners. They're walking in a line. Yes, basically. Not really. There's enough slack in the lines to where they can move. They can't run away because the whole line's chained together. Okay. Now these men, Don Quixote says, "Oh, this is Sancho Panza says this is a chain gang impressed by the king." Okay, being forced by the king to serve in the military, and going to the galleys. What are the galleys, Brian?
Galleys, long ships moved by oars and sails that were often used in war.
Okay, so this was a punishment. These men were being punished, but instead of being punished by death or imprisonment, the king has sent them to work in the galleys. Now, that's a punishment because working in the galleys was not a fun job. It was hot, it was hard work, a lot of men got sick, they were far from home, it was not fun. Nobody wanted to do it. Hence, why they made the prisoners do it. Okay, so they're being forced by the king to work in the galleys. Yes?
In the book it says there's 2 people in the front and 2 back.
Okay, so then 2 men on horseback. Thank you. Okay?
So 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
One question. Super quick. Out of the 2 students, Reading and Ethan, who would have best been here? Probably Reading.
Which Ethan?
Ian
Hannon?
Yeah.
Is there another one not named in there? Only one? Oh, that's Ethan right there.
That's Ethan Armstrong.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But maybe
Yeah, I would double check them again. If not, just don't enter it and I'll figure out who's in this one. Okay, how impressed, said Don Quixote. Is it possible that the king has the power to impress anyone he pleases? He says, is the king allowed to force anyone to serve in the galleys that he wants to? Sancho says, I mean that those people, on account of their crimes, have been condemned by the king to serve in the galleys, and are being taken to them by force, Sancho answered. So, in effect then, they are not going of their own free will, said Don Quixote. True, replied Sancho. Well, in that case, said his master, here is an occasion for me to perform my duty, which is to oppose violence and help those who are suffering. But, your worship, said Sancho, the king, for the sake of justice, he does no wrong or violence to such men, but he only punishes them for their crimes. By this time, the chain gang had come upon them. Don Quixote, using many courteous phrases to the guards, asked why the men were being conducted so in chains. Matthew?
So, you said there were 4 men on horseback?
Yes.
It says with them were 2 men on horseback with muskets, and 2 men on foot with pikes and swords.
Okay, either way, they have 4 guards, okay? Not worried about it. So, Don Quixote says, hold on a minute. These men, who are prisoners, mind you, they're not being taken of their own free will. They're being forced to go there by someone more powerful than them. Sancho's like, well, yeah, I mean, they are prisoners. They don't want to go to the galleys, but that's their punishment. Don Quixote says, well, then I must save them if they're being forced to do something they don't want to do. And Sancho's like, but sir, these are prisoners. They have committed crimes. They're being punished for that. Don Quixote does not seem to care. One of the mounted guards replied that they were convicts, the king's slaves who were going to the galleys, and there was no more to be said. The other mounted guard, who acted as their chief, said, we have the official records of these wretches with us, but this is not a convenient time to read them. All the same, said Don Quixote, I should like to know from each of them individually the cause of his misfortune. For falling in love, was the first man's answer. So, the first prisoner says the reason why he is being punished is because he had fallen in love. "For no more than that?" exclaimed Don Quixote. "If one is supposed to be sent to the galleys for that, then I myself should be rowing there." "Yeah, but mine was not the sort of love your worship is thinking of," said the fellow. "It was a strong affection for a laundry basket of fine linen clothes, which I embraced so ardently that it was only separated from me by the force of the law. I was caught in the act of stealing it, so there was no need to torture me to confess. They gave my shoulders 100 lashes for whips, and added 3 years in the galleys to finish the job." So, not that he loved someone in particular, but he loved something so much that he stole it. And it happened to be fine linen clothes. Okay? Don Quixote similarly asked the second man why he was in prison, but he would not answer, being sad, so the first one answered for him. "This man, sir, passes for a canary," a type of bird with a really beautiful song. "In other words, he's a singer." "What, are singers sent to the galleys?" asked Don Quixote. Okay, notice, here's the picture of the chain gang. See how the chain is kind of connected from one to the other? Okay, that's what we're talking about there. "Are singers sent to the galleys?" asked Don Quixote. "Yes, sir," said the convict. "There is nothing worse than singing when you are in pain." "I have always heard the saying, 'to sing in grief gives relief,'" Don Quixote answered. "Well, in this case it is just the opposite," the convict said. "For he who sings once may have to weep for the rest of his life." This is very confusing, right? Why is someone being punished for singing? But one of the guards explains. "You see, sir, among these rogues, or these prisoners, singing in pain means to confess under torture. They tortured this man, and he confessed or sung to stealing cattle. So he was sentenced to 6 years in the galleys, plus 200 lashes on his shoulders. He's always downcast because the others that were with him hate and abuse him because he confessed and did not have the nerve to persist in denying his guilt. As they put it, no is as easy to say as yes. They think a criminal has good luck when his fate depends only on his own tongue and not on witnesses and evidence. And I imagine they are mostly right." Okay, so the second man says that he is a singer. Okay, but to these prisoners, the nickname singer means someone who tattles, basically. Okay, so this man was in a group of people, a gang, that robbed a bunch of cattle. Basically, they stole them. Okay, no one caught them doing it, but they were accused. So the only thing they could do was torture these men until they were forced to confess. He was the first one to break. Okay, so he kind of is like the tattletale. Okay, the slang term for that is he sung. He was the singer. Okay, he sung to his own tune, basically. They pushed him to the point where he finally confessed. But when he confessed, that also made his entire gang guilty as well. So he's so upset and depressed because all of his friends hate him because he is the reason they are now all in prison. Does that make sense? That's how he is a singer. And?
What if they were innocent and they were just being tortured?
So now, back then it didn't matter. If they confessed, they confessed.
But then they were just tortured until they died.
Correct. Nowadays, that would probably not be considered a proper confession. But back then. Don Quixote went on to the third convict. This man told his story freely and carelessly. "I am going to the galleys for the want of 10 ducats, or gold coins." "Well, I will give you 20, said Don Quixote, "to relieve you from your present situation." So this man He owes money. So we're going to put a negative sign with a dollar sign. He is in debt. He owes someone 10 ducats or 10 gold silvers, 10 golden coins. Don Quixote says, well, I'll give you 20 if it will get you out of this situation. If at the right time I had had the 20 ducats your lordship mentions, replied the owner, I could have paid for a smooth-talking lawyer, and today I would be standing free in the marketplace of Toledo, instead of traveling this road on a dog's leash. But enough of this. God is great, and I must be patient. Don Quixote went on to the fourth man, who had a long gray beard hanging down on his chest. Like my beard?
That's a mustache.
Both. He began to weep and said not a word. However, the man next to him said, this fellow goes to the galleys for 4 years of selling women to men, witchcraft, and fortune-telling. Okay? So this man is just pure evil. He really deserves to be in prison. The old man admitted his offenses and said he meant no harm, and bemoaned the fact that at his age and in his state of health, he would never be free again. He would die in prison, basically. He's so old. Sancho felt such compassion for the old man that he even took a coin from his pocket and gave it to him in charity. Oh, sweet Sancho. Don Quixote went on to the next man, who explained with even more liveliness than the others his tangled relations with girls. The proofs are clear against me, he said, and as I have no friends and no money, and my neck was about to be stretched, I am satisfied with the price of 6 years in the galleys. I am still young, and while there is life, there is hope. This man wore the clothes of a student, and one of the guards said he was a wonderful speaker. So, this guy is also in jail for some broken heart reason. He either broke a girl's heart, or he was mean to her, maybe he was rude to her and hurt her in some way, but that's why he's in prison. Okay? But he's also young. He's a student, so we'll give him some glasses. Okay? He's a student, so he is hopeful that he will be able to live through 6 years in the galleys. Okay?
Make him a little shorter.
No. Last of all came a fine-looking man of about 30 years of age who was cross-eyed. He was chained hand and foot and had an extra iron collar around his neck. Alright, so this last guy, he must be something special because his feet are handcuffed together, his hands are handcuffed together, and he has double the amount of chains around his neck. Why would you put double chains around someone's neck? Brooklyn?
Maybe because he was so bad that they kind of wanted to take him.
Yes, he is so bad, and he's very strong and clever that he is like the worst of them all. Okay, he is the big bad guy, and they do not want to lose him out of anyone. Okay. His hands were manacled to an iron belt around his waist, so that he could not even raise them to his head, or lower his head to reach his hands. Don Quixote inquired why this man was so specially guarded, and one of the officers replied that it was because he was guilty of more crimes than all the rest put together, and was such a desperate and violent ruffian that, despite how shackled he was, they always feared he would escape. So this is the bad guy.
You have to triple chain him?
Well, what kind of crimes has he committed that he deserves no more punishment than being sent to the galleys? Don Quixote said. He says, if he's that bad, why is he being sent to the galleys? Why wouldn't they just lock him up forever? Well, he is going for 10 years, which is basically like being condemned to death, answered the guard. Basically, no one survives 10 years in the galleys. This is no other than Gines de Pasamonte. His alias is Genocidio de Parapilla. He has written a clever history of his own life and left the book in pawn at the prison for 200 reals. Don Quixote asked if his book was finished. How can I finish it if I am still alive? Answered the fellow himself. So far, it relates everything about me, from my birth up to this last time of being sent to the galleys. Then you've been sent to the galleys before? In the service of God in my country, I have done 4 years before now, and I well know the taste of biscuits and the lash, replied Gines. I'm not much troubled about going again, as I shall have time to write, and I have many more things to say. In the galleys of Spain, there is leisure enough for my purpose. Okay, so this guy is Gines de Pasamonte. Okay, he is a bad, bad man. All right, and he's been sent to the galleys before. He's going back to the galleys. Okay, and in prison, he's like the famous prisoner, right? He's kind of written his own autobiography. Everyone in the prison, all the other prisoners want to read it. They kind of argue over who gets to read it next. It's like he's kind of a big deal. Okay. You seem clever, said Don Quixote. And unfortunate, answered Gines. For misfortune always persecutes genius. Persecutes rascals, you mean, said the chief guard. Enough, said Gines. Left Giton. Isn't that interesting? He's the one giving directions, and he is the one in handcuffs. Almost like he is the controller of this whole thing.
He could be.
Not as in these guys are traitors, but as in they are so afraid of him that they do whatever he says.
Then why didn't he just let him go?
They won't do that. At this, Don Quixote turned around to the chain gang and addressed them so. From all that you have told to me, dear brothers, I gather that, although you are being punished for your crimes, what you are going through is not to your taste, and it is not with your goodwill that you are on your way to the galleys. He's like, I reckon that from what you just told me, I don't think you actually want to go to the galleys. It's not something you desire to do. Duh.
That's like prison.
It may be that this man's lack of endurance under torture, this man's lack of money, the other man's lack of influential friends, and the prejudiced views of your judges have all been the causes of your condemnation, and you have not had the full justice that you are entitled to. All this is, to my mind, urging me, even forcing me, to make clear to you why heaven has sent me into this world to be a professor of chivalry, which I am. I have sworn to help the wretched and defend those who are oppressed by the strong. But what can be done by fair means should not be done by force. I therefore beg these gentlemen who are guarding you to free you and let you depart in peace. There are many who would serve the king with a better will, and it does seem to me a hard case to make slaves of those whom God and nature made free. What does Don Quixote ask the guards to do? Connor?
Set them free.
Set the prisoners free.
And also, with that really bad one, that's basically trying to be...
Working up.
I think they should...
Where was I? Oh, we are all offenders here on earth, and there is a God above who will punish the bad and reward the good. This is a reasonable request, and I make it meekly and gently, so that I can thank you for granting it. But if you will not do so, this lance and sword in my invincible arm will force you to. This is pleasant foolery, said the chief guard. This silly mouse pops his head out of his hole at last. He wants us to release the prisoners of the king, as if we had the authority to do so, or as if he had the power to command it. Go on your way in peace, sir. Pay attention to keeping your barber's bowl on top of your head. And don't go looking for 5 legs on a cat. Okay, that's an insult, right?
I don't know what that means.
How about you focus on keeping that bowl on your head, and maybe don't try and look for a 5-legged cat, because they don't exist. As in, like, you're crazy.
Ooh.
Worry about that barber's bowl on your head, eh? A mouse and a cat yourself, answered Don Quixote, and he immediately attacked the officer, who had no chance to defend himself, and drove him to the ground with a lance thrust that wounded him badly. For a moment, the other guards were just stunned at the unexpected incident, but they soon advanced against Don Quixote, who calmly waited for their attack. No doubt it would have gone hard on him, but the convicts, seeing their chance to be free, began trying to break the chain that tied them together. This distracted the guards, who, trying to decide between fighting Don Quixote and controlling the prisoners, ended up doing nothing of use. Meanwhile, Sancho gave Gines de Pasamonte a hand at removing his shackles, and he was the first in the gang to get free.
Why?
So, Don Quixote charges and begins to fight against the guards. All these guys are like, whoa, they're distracted, let's try and get out of here. They're trying to loosen their chains, and Sancho helps him first.
Why? Just why even heavy metal?
Gines at once threw himself onto the wounded guard and seized the man's sword and pistol. He threatened the other guards with them, but held his fire, and they soon scurried away, both out of fear of Pasamonte's pistol and because of the stones that were being thrown at them by the convicts. So, all of these men escaped.
I'm surprised they even helped the last one at all.
Sancho wanted to go at once to the nearby mountains, naturally fearing that the guards would raise a search after them, but Don Quixote would not leave before talking to the convicts, who by now had stripped the wounded guard naked to take his stuff, basically.
Oh.
Calling them together, he reminded them of what he had done for them and how much they owed him, and commanded them therefore to go to Toboso and there to lay the chain that had bound them together at the feet of Lady Dulcinea, and tell how they were freed by the heroic feats of Don Quixote. After that, they could go wherever they pleased. Gines de Pasamonte spoke for all the convicts, saying that they could not do any such thing right now. Instead, they must scatter and hide from the pursuit of justice. He proposed that they each say prayers for their rescuer, since they could do this as they ran and hid. This put Don Quixote in a rage, and he demanded that Pasamonte go himself and carry the chain on his back. Okay, so what does he want them to do? He wants them to go to Dulcinea and lay that chain that he just broke off of them in front of her and talk about how wonderful he is. Your lovely warrior Don Quixote de la Mancha, he did this. He freed us from our chains, so that she would fall in love with him. And Pasamonte's like, no, listen, man, we gotta run away, so we'll do that later. Okay? Because right now we gotta go. And Don Quixote gets mad. He's like, no, you must. Pasamonte, seeing now the mental state of the man he was dealing with, motioned to the convicts to step back a few paces, where they began throwing a hurricane of stones at the knight and his squire. Sancho tried to hide behind his donkey, but Don Quixote and Rocinante were exposed to the full force of the storm, and in a short time both of them lay flat on the ground, very badly bruised. Pasamonte then ruthlessly attacked Don Quixote, beating him with the brass barber's basin repeatedly, and then banging the basin on the ground until it was almost smashed in pieces. Next, they stripped off his jacket and trousers. Sancho's cloak was taken too, and after hurriedly dividing the spoils, they made off in different directions and were quickly out of sight. So, Don Quixote was trying to save them, and in return, he got beat up. And he freed this entire gang of prisoners. They're now all on the loose, including the bad guy. Not great for dogs.